We are the Existentialist tradition, and I am going to discuss the general introduction of the Existentialism. Existentialism is a philosophy that emphasizes individual existence, freedom, and choice. It is the view that humans define their own meaning in life and try to make rational decisions despite existing in a irrational universe. It focuses on the question of human existence and the feeling that there is no purpose or explanation at the core of existence. It holds that as there is no God or any other transcendent force, the only way to encounter this nothingness and hence to find meaning in life is by embracing the existence. Thus, existentialism believes that individuals are entirely free and must take personal responsibility for themselves. Existentialism can be atheistic, theological, or agnostic. The important factor of existentialist is the freedom of choice to believe or not to believe.
My name is Gwendolyn Silikayan, tackling the existentialism overview. So what comes to your mind when we talk about existentialism? I'll go first. Well, existentialism, from the word existence, the philosophy is based on existence. From the Latin word ex means out and exer, to stand. When we add the two, x is out and stare is to stand, it means to stand out. What is existentialism? We are our choices, and every individual is unique. It's philosophy that holds your existence. Human persons do not possess the essence, they make choices that create their own nature. It is subjective because it is not only described for one fact or one-sided idea. It is the modern philosophical view which takes Tao, it is starting point. Each person is personally responsible for their own choices. Existentialism is a person personally responsible for their own actions. Man is subjective to the dread involved in the choices. Individuals must be accountable for their own actions and behavior, and their own destinies. Emphasis on ethical judgment and personal responsibility, human freedom, understood precisely as the freedom to choose. Freedom of choice entails risk, responsibility, and commitment. Existentialism, human existence is starting point of thinking human. One is responsible for the effect of their choice or decision, since they have an impact on other individuals in addition to themselves. Now, the key ethical issues in existentialism is we are not burdened from our freedom. Existentialism's main issues concentrate around the individual, his place in the world, and ultimate meaning. Where did existentialism originate? Soren Kierkegaard, 1813 to 1855, an existentialist philosopher. Kierkegaard was many things: philosopher, religion, writer, satirist, psychologist, journalist, literacy critic, and generally considered as the father of existentialism. The proponents among the best-known existentialism are Soren Kierkegaard, Martin Heidegger, Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus. Soren Kierkegaard, 1813 to 1855. This man functions, grows, develops, makes choices, suffers, experiences intense feeling, and faces God as an individual. Well, according to him, life is not a problem to be solved, but the reality to be experienced. And yes, I agree to that. Next is Martin Heidegger, German philosopher whose work is associated with phenomenology and existentialism. His ideas have exerted influence on the development of contemporary European philosophy. According to him, every man is born as many men and dies as a single one. Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905-1980, French philosopher and principal spokesman for existentialism movement post-war France. According to him, we are responsible for everything we do. Yes, the destiny of man is placed with himself. Man is condemned to be free. Yes. Albert Camus, a French-Algerian journalist, dealt over such question the meaning of life in the face of death. And according to him, I would rather live myself as there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than live as there isn't and die to find out that there is. Approaches to education. Values education is a matter of choice that goes throughout existence. And criticism to any individual work is less important. Criticism to any individual work is less important. Now, existentialism is very important because these examples taking the responsibility for your own actions and believing as an educator that being a teacher is providing and beneficial and critical role in growth of the student. Thank you.
Although existentialist philosophers sometimes refuse to define existentialism because they are opposed to thinking of their philosophic posture as an inflexible and rigid doctrine, it is possible to determine the basis of this movement by nothing but some of its characteristics. Foremost is that existentialists place on the meaning of man's personal freedom, and that man is decisive in his own life, in that he makes his life what is by his own freedom. The authentic man must commit himself, and that he cannot give his power of choice away without in some way dehumanizing himself and becoming fraudulent of subhuman. This preoccupation with man's responsibility to himself is a reflection of the very great moral crisis of the 1940s. The fearful fact of genocide of the Jews in Germany, the terror of the underground, the betrayal of their countrymen by who gave in fraudulent promises, the grim worldview of an apparently bankrupt Western culture facing possible atomic annihilation. Another characteristic of existentialist movement is its affirmation of the unique individual as opposed to the zero men or spheres that make up the crowd. From 1813 to 55, Soren Kierkegaard, who saw that decisive fate of the individual confronted with the option to have religious faith or not. The individual slip into faith and his deep need to decide his fate by a freedom acceptance of the Christian commitment are the themes of the Kierkegaard solution, the task of becoming subjective. Another existentialist philosopher, who is a German philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844 to 1990s, who during his lifetime was an ardent critic of the declining status and fraudulent value of the educated middle class of his generation. In addition, his famous analysis of the will to power as a primary motivation of human beings, he anticipated Freud's theory of sublimation with his theory of overcoming, and made a critical study of the quality of resentment. Next is Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905, who in addition to becoming a philosopher, distinguished literal artists whose plays, novels, and short stories are widely read. Next is Gabriel Marcel, 1883, who is another leading member of the school, a convert to Catholicism. He seems in a conflict between existentialist value and Christian thought. Marcel's sensitive and probing description of creative fidelity is found in the selection taken from Man Against Society. Also, included is a selection by Albert Camus, 1930-60, a contemporary of Sartre and Marcel. Some of the reasons why Camus is such a moral hero to the younger generation can be seen in the passages from the Rebel 1950 War. Camus' tragic death in an automobile accident a few years ago was a sad loss to contemporary philosophy. Last is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, 1881 to 1955. Properly speaking, an existentialist, he is nonetheless related to the movement as one who reflected the tendency of many serious students of existentialism to move from a study of the individual in his freedom to the study of collectivity in which every man must exercise his freedom. For all, existentialism is a philosophical theory that people are free agents who have control over their choices and actions. Existentialists believe that society should not restrict an individual's life or actions, and that these restrictions inhibited free will and development of that person's potential.
Good day everyone, I am Ruby Burinaga and I will be discussing the perspectives of the key issues of value and obligation. First is value. Value of a man. The authenticity and commitment. The good life is the life of freedom and responsibility. The belief is that people are searching to find out who they are and what they are throughout life, as they make choices based on their experiences, beliefs, and outlook. And personal choices become unique without the necessity of an objective form of truth. An existentialist believes that a person should be forced to choose to be responsible without the help of laws, ethnic rules, or traditions. In existentialism, authenticity is the degree to which a person's actions are congruent with his or her values and desires, despite external pressures to social conformity. Authenticity involves the idea that one has to create oneself and live in accordance with this self. For an authentic existence, one should act as oneself, not as one acts or as one genes, or as any other essence requires. The authentic act is one in accordance with one's freedom, commitment, or engagement. Thus, ultimately, the basis for an authentically meaningful life. That is one that answers to the existential condition of being human, and does not flee that condition by appeal to an abstract system of reason or divine will. It means willingness to live fully, to make life meaningful through acceptance of all. It may hold both joy and sorrow. Freedom is shown to be a prerequisite to making commitments, and to having and being committed to commitments, which have an objective band. The effects of a commitment on freedom are then discussed, starting with the way in which commitment can limit freedom, and what type or dimension of freedom is limited. Freedom is then shown to be a possible fruit of commitment, in two important senses. First, commitment can lead to freedom from selfishness and moral blame. Second, commitments can lead to freedom for the good. Next is obligation. Man is obligated to create and project himself into authentic existing by his moral action. Since all criteria or standards for evaluating our actions are also freely chosen, in our actions we are also deciding what sorts of reasons are going to guide our action, with no higher tribunal for evaluating reasons for acting. We are entirely responsible for what we do. We have no excuses behind us, nor justifications before us. Kierkegaard. Decision making is accompanied by loneliness and anguish. For Kierkegaard, it refers to a being with total free will, who is in a constant state of spiritual fear in the face of their unlimited freedom. Anguish is often understood as the experience of an utterly free being in a world with zero absolutes, or the existential despair. It is generally held to be a negative feeling arising from the experience of human freedom and responsibility. Sartre. Man is condemned to be free. Sartre tries to capture this idea by saying that humans are condemned to be free. Sartre means that it cannot be held necessarily true, that actions are good or bad in virtue of God's deeming it. As such, it is upon human beings to decide what is good and what is bad. He says, we are left alone without excuse. That is what I mean when I say that man is condemned to be free. Condemned because he did not create himself, yet nevertheless at liberty. And from that moment that he is thrown into this world, he is responsible for everything he does. One must not exercise bad faith by denying the self's freedom of choice and accountability. Taking on the burden of personal accountability in all situations is an intimidating proposition. By pointing out the freedom of the individual, Sartre seeks to demonstrate that the social rules and moral systems that we adopt protect us from being morally accountable for our actions.
Natural law of existentialism. As we have seen in analyzing the notion of natural law in the classical Christian tradition, law is primarily an ordination of reason. Law is also systematic. Reason and system are both rejected as inadequate for the choices that the existentialists, especially Sartre and Kierkegaard, that are to see as the condemned to make. They acknowledge that there are moral principles and maxims, but they insist that these are all too often in conflict. Sartre gives us an example that plight of a young man who is torn between the desire to serve his country by joining the army and the last one is virtue. A key human accent for the existentialist is authenticity or integrity. We are asked to dare to be the individuals we are. As Kierkegaard said of himself, he would rather be remembered as individual, even eccentric, than simply another zero man in the crowd. A related virtue in that responsibility. We are urged to be honest in facing choices as well in their sequences. Above all, we are not to deceive ourselves and close our eyes to situations in which we are morally involved. Continuing sense of such responsibility makes us Marcel's key virtue of fidelity.